nostalgic America in 1964, with a 16-year-old boy and girl. Yeah, it was a time of discovery, a time of change. Our senses were heightened, touch went deeper.
Our eyes saw colors beyond the spectrum.
We reached into living things, knowing them.
And the odors called, mixed with emotion.
All things we felt continuously now, as in other times,
Some knew only in rare moments of ecstasy.
when melded happenings had lifted them heavenward. Our ambitions missed, drifted upward each morning,
Outlining daydreams, although still forming.
but rising still into the clear sunlight.
And taking shape, sculpting clouds, then sailing.
Yeah, as we were on and ever on. There were country roads
Quaint inns.
and dilapidated barns.
Ah, the simple beauty of it all.
We danced the song of evening bells rung.
In a twilight zone in nowhere's middle.
Yeah, it felt like we were in some kind of magical place, didn't it?
Indeed, it was a moment suspended in time, where the past and present seemed to blur together.
We began to study the history of libraries, and especially with Joanne's mother, she being a big help. For she was an academic, of course.
Oh, absolutely. Libraries have always been the heart of knowledge and learning, and there's so much to uncover.
With Joanne's mother's guidance, the world of ancient books and scrolls opened up to us, revealing secrets of the past. The Great Library and Museum of Alexandria was the chief wonder of the ancient world, containing an incredible mass of literature, art, and knowledge, from the complete works of Homer and the golden coffin of Alexander the Great, to priceless charts of lost gold, mineral and oil deposits that could change the balance of power in the world today. The loss of the library, burned in 391 AD, has been considered by scholars one of the world's great tragedies. We pondered all this during our travels. The echoes of such a monumental loss still reverberate through history, reminding us of the fragility of human achievement. How could some old high school teacher have known that some treasures were taken out of the Library of Alexandria in Egypt and hidden somewhere?
Because he found an old coin.
Or someone else did that he knew.
We'll have to get the tracing looked up in a coin catalog.
There's a coin shop on Lake Street.
And he never came back to his office for any of his things, such as the books, rocks, and bones.
True. And the tunnel that carved away most of his classroom was built in the summer of '37.
Maybe the janitors thought he would return in the fall, and so they left the remains of his room alone.
Indeed, but he had somewhere better to go. Plus his room wasn't really usable, and no one ever worried about his room again.
They didn't even use it as a broom closet.
No, and there is a broom closet across the hall, so they didn't need to.
Yet he left some clues on a paper in his wastebasket.
Somehow it never got emptied, as he had expected it to be. Looks like those last note fragments were from a ship's log.
Yes, but why didn't he come back?
Either he couldn't come back, or he found what he was looking for and lived happily ever after somewhere.
His name and address is still on the blackboard.
302 Lombard, not far from the school. Of all the lost treasures of the world, the systematic and wanton devastation of the greatest sanctuary of knowledge in the ancient world, the Alexandrian Library, is the most stupendous of losses. The destruction of the world's great libraries has been commonplace through history. The great collections of Thebes, Nineveh, Baghdad, and Louvain were all destroyed. But none of these libraries can compare to the myth and legend surrounding the library and museum that was the jewel of the sophisticated culture of ancient Alexandria, Egypt. Legend tells us Alexandria contained a library and museum that eventually held every great work of literature in the world. Every great literary work of the Greeks was there, as well as other collections of Roman, Jewish, and Arabian scholars. What became of all these treasures has been the collective wonderment of historical detectives for centuries. Aristotle, Plato's brilliant student and eventual tutor of Macedonia's Alexander the Great, was one of the first scholars to collect and preserve the written word. Aristotle's collection included versions of Homer that were certainly different than what we know today. Aristotle bequeathed his collection to a favorite student who subsequently left the library to a relative, Neleus of Cyprus. It is believed that Neleus eventually sold part of his collection to Ptolemy, who was responsible for starting the Alexandrian library. We found the teacher's house on Lombard Avenue. It was long shuttered and in great disrepair with paint peeling off. Dare we enter?
Might as well.
The porch door pretty much just fell off in our hands. There was nothing interesting in there at all, just furniture and 2 pictures on the wall in what may have once been the teacher's study. Scribbled on the wall between the 2 pictures were the words fire and ice. Who the heck keeps a picture of Newfoundland and Texas on their wall?
Well, he was a geology teacher, which can involve landforms and archaeology. The map shows the topography of those places.
This place is a dead end.
Seems to be.
I looked in the phone book and there was a lady on the next block who had the same last name as the teacher. We walked over and inquired. She was the teacher's sister, who immediately put us at another dead end by saying that she hadn't heard from her brother for near 30 years. Furthermore, there were no more living relatives.
He has vanished.
She told us. We left. Outside, Joanne suggested,
Perhaps he's taking all these years to decode the logs or the scrolls that he came by?
when Alexander died, there was tremendous infighting among his confederates as to who would rule his domain. Ptolemy, one of Alexander's generals and reputedly a half-brother, seized control of a large part of Egypt, which included Alexandria. Ptolemy became the most successful of Alexander's successors. Alexander the Great, son of Philip II and Olympias, inherited the crown of Macedonia at the age of 20 when his father was assassinated in 336 BC until his death in India of malaria in 324 BC. He conquered most of the known world in and around the Mediterranean and spread Hellenistic culture into Asia, Persia, and Egypt. His astounding accomplishment in just 12 years, though at a tremendous cost of human life, left a mythical aura around his name. In 332 BC, he established Alexandria, which became Egypt's largest city for 2,000 years. Alexander was embalmed by Eastern masters, swathed in malleable plates of gold to fit the contour of the body, and set in a golden casket that was paraded through his kingdom behind 64 gold-bedecked mules. For months, the funeral procession journeyed from Babylon through Mesopotamia, over Syria to Damascus, and was eventually to end at Aegae, Macedonia, where Alexander would be placed with other royalty. Ptolemy realized what a great political coup it would be to have the remains of the great king in Alexandria. He took an army to the procession and persuaded the leader to allow him to perform the last rites. While Alexander rested in Memphis, Ptolemy built an impressive mausoleum in Alexandria made of the rarest Greek and Egyptian marbles. This became Alexander's final resting place that lasted 3 centuries. In 89 BC, Ptolemy IX, in a great need of money to continue his reign over Alexandria, had the gold sarcophagus melted into coin. The sarcophagus was housed in colored glass and eventually disappeared completely in the centuries that followed. Ptolemy went about creating the most comprehensive library known in the ancient world. The organization of the library was trusted to Demetrius Phalereus, who was familiar with the library at Athens. Ptolemy went about purchasing scrolls and copying those he could not purchase. His goal was to accumulate all of the known literary works of the world, which was an estimated 500,000 scrolls. Ptolemy ordered that all books on ships that called on Alexandria were to be copied. Copies were returned to the ships, and the originals were confiscated and stored in the library. Meanwhile, we traded poems and sayings.
A complete life sparkles like a diamond. Each facet of the diamond contributes its view of the world and adds to the lustrous effect.
Friends and interests are the shimmering glints and gleams of reality's sparkle.
Each face of the diamond enriches the view of the other faces,
All of the facets reflect off each other, combining and then building into the overall brilliance of life,
which makes you a more rounded person,
which in turn adds to the luster of your individual pursuits.
which therefore makes the diamond even brighter still, and so forth and so forth. It is self-perpetuating and of infinite growth.
We had gotten the coin tracing identified. It was circa 400 AD.
I noted, yes, the teacher had a ship's log, which means he might also have had the remains of the ship.
Ship logs could last that long?
They were carved into tablets in those days for protection at sea over frail papyrus.
A 58-day voyage, now that is really far.
It could have been slowed by weather.
Maybe, but why would they want to go such a long way from Egypt?
They had to go very far or someone would find them.
And the notes say they stashed the treasures that must have been the cream of the Library of Alexandria, and then were beset by barbarians. At some unknown point, only one ship surviving to escape.
To a very cold place where they met their end.
Or not, but maybe on a ship somehow preserved there for 1,600 years, in the ice perhaps.
Greenland or Iceland or Siberia.
Iceland was populated, the ship would have been noted.
Now how would they even get as far as Greenland?
I don't know. But the teacher had a picture of Newfoundland on his wall in his study, the next stop after Greenland and Iceland.
That he did. Let us go back and take a closer look.